I thoroughly believe that the Zelda series doesn't need an introduction. Whether you're super into the gaming landscape or not, you've most likely have heard about The Legend of Zelda. Like Mario, Minecraft, Sonic, and Halo, The Legend of Zelda is synonymous with video games at this point. And it's hard to argue that Zelda isn't one of the most influential franchises in video games' short history. Along with Donkey Kong and Super Mario Bros., The Legend of Zelda was initially created by one man's quest to capture human experiences as games. The first Zelda game, which launched in 1986 in North America for the Nintendo Entertainment System, was a polar opposite of Miyamoto's other hit franchise, Super Mario Bros. Instead of linear platforming, you had an entire world to explore, go, and do whatever you want. Little did Miyamoto or anyone at Nintendo know that over 30 years later, The Legend of Zelda is still one of the major heavyweights in the gaming industry. Millions of fans await each release like it'll be the second coming of Christ, scouring the internet just waiting for any tidbits of information they can find. Considering most Zelda games have a development cycle of around 4 to 6 years, it's understandable why Zelda fans eagerly await any information that they can get. What I really want to talk about, however, isn't how big the franchise is. In fact, I'm going to try to put into words how Zelda has captured the hearts of many fans. So far, with my videos, I've mainly talked about game design principles, how to improve Zelda and how to make a Donkey Kong Country level and stuff like that. But this time I want to take a moment and just utterly appreciate what the Zelda series is and what it has done. Now, it needs to be said that the Zelda series didn't just happen to get a 99, a 97, two 96s, and a 93 with the 5 main entries in the series on Metacritic. From 1998, with the launch of Ocarina of Time, the Legend of Zelda series has not only maintained, but, in the eyes of many fans, improved on a consistent quality with their games. If you go on Metacritic and look at the Legend of Zelda series, there's only one game on their list that has below an 80. Triforce Heroes, which is widely considered not to be a main entry, though it is still an enjoyable game. Of course, it should be said that reviews don't mean the world. Whether it be professional review sites or the gaming community in general, I don't believe there has ever been as much universal praise for a franchise as there has been for Zelda. Whenever people talk Super Mario, it's widely known that the general gaming community believes that Super Mario Sunshine is the weakest of the series, a game that was beloved at the time, but nowadays people think is pretty average in general. Is there a game in Zelda like that? Well, some people say that Skyward Sword is that. A lot of other people used to say that Wind Waker was that game, or Ocarina of Time is now that game. So I would argue that it's just a change of times. Breath of the Wild, for example, is the biggest departure from the Zelda formula that the community seemed to get tired of when Skyward Sword rolled around. The beautiful music that engrosses you in the world, the beautiful sights around Hyrule itself with its gorgeous architecture, history, and lore. Breath of the Wild manages to deviate very far from Skyward Sword, Twilight Princess, and even Ocarina of Time, yet in doing so, it still holds true to what makes a Zelda game. Adventure. Whether you're a lone seafaring kid looking for a sister, a knight in training attempting to save his love, or some kid who is woken up in the middle of the night, all of these have the same strings attached. A grand adventure, a whimsical, magical, yet grounded experience of exploration, problem solving, and intense combat that always culminates in a grand, cinematic, and poetic battle against the world's greatest evil. The Zelda series has always been able to envelop players in a sense of adventure through a couple of main pillars of the series. The world itself. The land of Hyrule is, at this point, almost synonymous with the Zelda series. Whether it be a pixelated Hyrule, a small poly-count Hyrule, a flooded Hyrule, or anything in between, Nintendo, Shigeru Miyamoto, and series producer Eiji Aonuma have always been able to create a beautiful land with great landmarks, a colorful cast of characters, and a wonderful sense of a living, breathing world full of mystery. Upon leaving Kokiri Forest, Ordon Village, Outset Island, Skyloft, or even just a cave, the player is hit with choices on where they want to go. They can essentially go wherever their minds can take them in most of these games, allowing your mind to wonder, what happened as you stumble upon ruins of an ancient civilization or old decrepit temples. Zelda has a way of constantly prodding the player to search every nook and cranny to really dig deep into the world and find as much as they can. What's beautiful about this is it's natural, it's not forced upon the player, but the game invites the player to explore a land that feels oddly familiar in many ways. Like wandering the woods with good friends, the world of Hyrule isn't always about the views or what you find under that rock, but about the adventure itself. The lore. The lore surrounding the Zelda series is almost as deep as some novels, yet funnily enough, a lot of the lore in the Zelda series simply comes from the world itself. Through odd spirits in temples, mummies who just want some bugs, or what is just laying around in the world itself, you're able to grasp so much of what is going on with the lore simply by observing the world. By being curious about the physical world of Hyrule, you're rewarded with more knowledge of Hyrule. However, one of the key things when it comes to Zelda's whimsical lore is the mystery. There are so many questions that go unanswered in Zelda that there are multiple Zelda tubers on YouTube dedicated to discussing these types of things. Naturally, Zelda has its own book called the Hyrule Historia, which recounts the history of Hyrule, a lot of the major points of lore, and some small tidbits that are really interesting. Yet a lot of what is found in Hyrule Historia is experienced through the adventure that one goes on while simply taking in the world around you. At the same time, however, the Zelda team has specifically stayed quiet on a lot of things. It could be that it's out of not wanting to put resources into details that ultimately don't matter, but I genuinely believe, however, that there are lots of things left unanswered because the creators wanted to create that sense of wonder within you. They want to spark your imagination on what the Snow Peak ruins originally were, or what the Forest Temple was initially built for, or how the heck a chest ended up on top of a pillar. The mystery, the atmosphere, and the entire world of Zelda are heightened to new levels by one more thing: the music. As someone who is involved with band and has a high appreciation for music and music theory, there is no other series with music like Zelda. With timeless classics like Zelda's Lullaby, Song of Storms, Kakariko Village, and of course, there's no song quite like the one true Zelda song. In fact, no matter what Zelda game you boot up, you know just from the intro you're in for one of the best gaming experiences of your life. Whether it be that wonderful SNES fall with the grand opening, or the lovingly touched piano notes with Epona riding in the background. Or the upbeat and cheery flute seeing the Great Sea. I think it's a part of the reason why Zelda has so much nostalgia for some people. The music in this series is instantly recognizable, not only by saying, that's from a Zelda game, but which specific Zelda game. Each game has their own unique and beautiful sound, much like how the games are in general. It's known that Koji Kondo is an absolute legend in the games industry for writing scores for Mario and Zelda, but I truly believe it's in the compositions he has done for Zelda that we get to see Kondo flex his muscles. Aside from Kondo himself, you have tracks like The Great Sea with triumphant horns marking your journey for adventure upon the vast ocean. or the Realm Overworld from Spirit Tracks, a song that builds momentum from the beginning, chugging at a steady pace like a steam engine. Or the Clocktown theme, a theme that exasperates anxiety and fear with each day, speeding up and distorting, but keeping the same cheerful and fun undertones that makes it so catchy. Pulling it back, you have the quieter, more emotional tracks like Minda's Lament, fueling a race against time as you try to save your friend. Farewell Hyrule King, a somber redo of the Hyrule Castle theme from A Link to the Past, waving goodbye to the King of Red Lions as he drowns with the legacy of Hyrule. Or Fi's Farewell, a quiet piano track that, like the character the song was named after, has been following you from the beginning, helping you along the way accomplish what you, the player, accomplished. Whether it be the well-loved Zelda games like Ocarina of Time or Wind Waker, or the DS games like Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks, each game has a killer soundtrack that in itself takes the listener on an adventure through the land of Hyrule. There's a reason why I started the video with a cold open of Twilight Princess's opening. Twilight Princess was my introduction to the Zelda franchise. It was the first Zelda game I beat, the first Zelda game I watched someone beat, and that someone being my brother, and the first Zelda-related content I fell in love with. I was hooked. The way that Link looked, the way that he moved around, the helm splitter, the sumo wrestling with rocks, the way Wolf Link attacked in that beautiful, beautiful opening. Twilight Princess was my first adventure. I was a young kid when I first played it, so I hadn't really been anywhere too exciting other than my backyard, West Virginia and North Carolina. But this was something completely different. A world filled with monsters, shopkeepers, creepy dungeons filled with monkeys, spiders, jellies, skeletons, ghosts, and more. A world with great combat, exhilarating horseback riding, a fantastic atmosphere, triumphant storytelling, and a masterclass in engaging video game cinematography for 2006. I remember standing in my basement, waggling the Wiimote just to cut some grass, having to aim ever so precisely after knocking an arrow to snipe a bokoblin while he was sleeping. Then having that final stand against Ganondorf, who, for all I know, just killed my best friend. Having the glow of the CRT on my face as I stood with my Wiimote and nunchuck apart, for some reason believing now that I actually had a sword and shield, waiting for him to strike, and then maniacally mashing the A button to win the face-off against my foe. Finally, the credits began to roll, and then I saw the text I yearned for, but never wanted to actually reach. The end. I sat down and waited. I stared at the screen, waiting for something more. Not waiting, yearning for something more. And that was when I realized that my journey was over, which wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but I knew I wanted to go on another. I went over to our old Windows XP machine, booting up AOL to search The Legend of Zelda, and lo and behold, this wasn't the only one. There were many Zelda games, and from that point on, I was all in. I wanted to go on more adventures in Hyrule. I consumed any Zelda media I could find, buying the games on Game Boy, getting Ocarina of Time for my birthday from my older brother, who was the one who introduced me to this wonderful series. I even bought an NES when I was 12 years old for the sole reason of getting the original 2 Zelda games on there. I wanted the authentic experience, which is still how I prefer to play any retro games today. On that day, about 13 years ago, I went on the journey of a lifetime. Through the land of Hyrule, and with each game in the series I played, that journey continued. I know for a fact that there are so many other people out there who have experienced the same thing or similar. Whether they experienced that journey on the NES, the Super Nintendo, the N64, the GameCube, the Wii, the Game Boy, the DS, the 3DS, the Wii U, or the Nintendo Switch, it's still the same wonderful adventure. And no, not an adventure or even a journey. It's simply a legend.